you feel deserves an apology from the entire world? Story 1. Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis. In the early 1800s, he determined that fewer patients would die if doctors washed their hands before surgery. He was largely ignored because germ theory wasn't yet the dominant explanation for disease. Ultimately died at age 47 in an insane asylum. Story 2. This is random, but Gene Wilder's wife, Karen Boyer, they were happily married for 25 years, and Wilder considered her the love of his life. She cared for him through his battle with Alzheimer's only for him to die and for every article and online post to say now he can finally be with Gilda again. Poor woman, I still think of her regularly. Story 3. I remember where in Japan a man who was governor of a town spent a lot of money building a wall to stop or mitigate tsunamis. He was hated by the townspeople. After he died, after the 2011 tsunami, his town was one of the few that had little damages. His gravesite is now very respected by the Japanese. Story 4. Every aspiring entertainer in the UK who had their careers ruined because they spoke up about Jimmy Savile, who turned out to be a serial offender and child molester for decades. Pistol singer John Lydon Johnny Rotten tried to out Savile on air in 1978, over 30 years before it all came out. The clip never went to air, and he was banned from the nearly 600 victims that we know of, the industry and the new and covered it up, Monica Lewinsky. Story 5. Lindy Chamberlain Creighton, who was imprisoned, lambasted, and parroted around the world, all because a dingo dragged her baby out from their camping site and killed her. Story 6. David Attenborough. He spent years beautifully showing us how incredible Earth is and how it's our duty to look after it, and we all just never seem to get any better. Story 7. Every Me Too victim who came forward, accusing a rich or powerful person of a crime, the cowards hiding behind keyboards in the safety of their homes, harassing victims. Story 8. The working horses, donkeys, mules, camels, elephants that tourists take advantage of for an experience when they are being tortured to behave for it. Story 9. The man in the picture of the Tips Fedora meme, Jerry Messing. He a good-hearted upstanding man, yet he is ruthlessly compared to neckbeards, incels, and nice guys because of one photo he took. Story 10. The girl with glasses that is used for every feminist triggered meme in the world. She didn't even get triggered and aggravated. She actually stated a fact and that was it. She also did so respectfully and civilly in a polite discussion. It's just her facial gestures and expressions and overall look make people turn her into a meme. Story 11. Anita Hill. If we had listened to her, so much trouble could have been avoided. Sinead O'Connor. She was right. Captain Brett Crozier. He did the right thing for his crew and the best thing he could for the fleet by recognizing the seriousness of the COVID infection on his ships. Al Gore. He should have been president. Jimmy Carter. He was a better president than he was given credit for. So much of what he was blamed for were just bad things that happened when he was president. Anthony Fauci. The man has dedicated his life to public service to be vilified by ignorant people and grifters. There are a lot of people who have been unfairly maligned. Story 12. Martha Mitchell. She was the wife of U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell, and she tried to tell others about what she knew about Watergate and other corruption in the Nixon administration. She was dismissed, written off, even briefly kidnapped and blackmailed to keep quiet, and then later called mentally ill. It took decades before the truth finally came out that she was telling the truth, and she was indeed blackmailed and harassed because she knew too much and dared speak up about it. Story 13. The guy who rescued the Thai boys in the mine, only for Elon Musk to call him a pedophile for no reason whatsoever, and then newspapers around the world published it. Horrific, probably ruined that guy's life. Just cause Musk was jealous of the praise UE got for rescuing them. Story 14. Anita Hill. She didn't even come forward. She was subpoenaed, then mocked, harassed some more and treated like a punchline. All cause some who's now everyone's problem harassed her. There's a great You're Wrong About podcast about her. Story 15. Amanda Knox. Right, I mean they found the murderer yet she had her life ruined and spent 4 years in jail because she found the body and called the cops. Story 16. Corey Feldman. Dude tried for years to warn everyone about Hollywood. No one listened, just blacklisted him and wrote him off as another washed-up crazy drug-addicted child star. Story 17. Alan Turing. Alan Turing 19121954 was a British mathematician, logician, and computer scientist who is widely regarded as one of the fathers of modern computing and artificial intelligence. His key contributions include Turing Machine 1936, a theoretical model that formalized the concept of computation and algorithms. This work laid the foundation for modern computer science. Code-breaking at Bletchley Park during World War II, Turing played a crucial role in breaking Nazi Germany's Enigma code, significantly shortening the war and saving millions of lives. Turing Test 1950 proposed in his paper Computing Machinery and Intelligence. It explores the question, can machines think, and suggests a test for machine intelligence. Early computer design. Turing worked on some of the first designs for electronic computers, including the Automatic Computing Engine ACE. Despite his immense contributions, Turing was persecuted for being homosexual, which was then illegal in the UK. In 1952, he was chemically castrated and died in 1954 under suspicious circumstances, officially ruled a suicide. In 2009, the British government apologized, and he was posthumously pardoned in 2013. Today, Turing is celebrated as a visionary and tragic hero in both science and human rights. Story 18. Ignaz Semmelweis invented hand washing. His theory was denounced. He was ridiculed by the medical community. and after a nervous breakdown, was committed to an asylum and died 14 days later due to gangrene likely caused by the guards who beat him. Story 19. The Iraqi people, though maybe not the entire world and more so the US, Al Gore, since he would have been a better president, all indigenous people who suffered from genocides and has their cultures erased. Ukraine too, millions were starved by Stalin and they are now being invaded. Story 20. Sinead O'Connor was treated unfairly by the world for speaking the truth too soon. When she tore up a photo of the Pope on live TV to protest abuse in the church, people didn't listen. They attacked her, called her crazy, and shut her out of the music industry. Years later, the abuse she spoke out against was finally exposed, proving she was right all along. Sinead was brave, honest, and stood up for what was right, even when it cost her everything. She didn't deserve the hate, she deserved our respect. Story 21. The lady who sued McDonald's for her coffee being too hot. McDonald's smear campaign did irreparable damage to her image, and we all owe her a huge apology. Story 22. Hillary Clinton. Basically everything she said would happen in 2016 if Trump were elected has happened. She was right about it all, and if more people had listened to her we wouldn't be in the mess we're in right now. She also would have been a good president too. Story 23. Sinead O'Connor. She called out the Pope and Catholic Church live on TV in the 90s for doing bad things. Years later and her career never recovered. Story 24. I can't believe that no one has mentioned Lorena Bobbitt yet. The poor woman was abused, beaten and raped by her husband, and she became an absolute punchline when in a fit of desperation, she did what she could to defend herself. Story 25. Elizabeth Berkley starred in one over-the-top movie in which she was naked much of the time, and ridiculed as a result. The movie Showgirls was actually not bad, and was a kind of feminist film. Paul Verhoeven also deserves an apology. Story 26. Honestly, every woman who's ever been silenced, doubted, or dismissed when she spoke her truth, the world owes them more than an apology, it owes them justice and change. Story 27. Richard Simmons. He was an icon of positivity, always looking on the bright side of things and giving people confidence to love themselves. People only focused on his sexuality, which he never publicly disclosed, and that's perfectly fine. I can remember all through the 80s and 90s during the peak of his popularity, him being razzied constantly. People are dicks and should off to whence they came. Story 28. The guy who helped rescue the kids from a horrific cave accident in Thailand. Imagine being called a pedophile by Musk and then losing a court case for defamation. Story 29. Leonard Peltier. If you've only heard about his case, you don't think he did anything wrong. Once you learn about the facts of the case, you realize he most likely was guilty. Once you understand the facts of the case, you don't think he did anything wrong. Story 30. Dixie Chicks. They deserve a major apology from all the hate-filled right-wing delusionals who supported traitor George Bush when he lied about WMD in Iraq in order to justify his criminally treasonous war. Had those lame-witted idiots believed him, we could have saved the lives of 4,400 Americans and countless Iraqis. Story 31. Hillary Clinton. Decades of attacks by the media for daring to be a powerful woman with opinions and not sucking up to them. It'll take a moderately progressive Democrat over a senile fascist any day. 1 million Americans died quickly from COVID, so maybe a woman who founded a large international public health organization wouldn't have had a government openly praising people trying to kidnap a governor because they were too selfish to wear masks. Story 32. Has America ever officially apologized for the Vietnam War? Whilst the obvious answer is Palestine, I'm just wondering if the Vietnamese ever got their apology.
Story 33. Al Gore.
Literally won both the popular and electoral votes as determined by a media consortium which actually counted all Florida votes and confirmed when all the votes were counted he had the most. But barely, and would have actually tried to do something about climate change since he was talking about it many years before other famous US politicians. The George W. Bush successful coup put the country and planet on the path to ruin. Oh, and he actually was correct in that he took the initiative to create what became the internet we all know, by working to make public the government's early internet. Story 34. Foster kids. Only 3 go to college. Not that college is everything. You can be just as successful with no degree, but these kids often age out, have no one to support them, and IMO society should feel more responsible to help these poor kids. Story 35. Ross Perot. We laughed at his voice and we laughed at his charts and we laughed at his ideas that jobs were going to flee to Mexico and impoverish American workers. Story 36. Me, of course, followed by Sinead O'Connor, the lady whose baby was eaten by a dingo, and anyone who served time for possession of weed in the last 10 years. Story 37. Monica Lewinsky, who was clearly a young woman who was taken advantage of by someone in a high position of power, and instead of being supported was fat-shamed and publicly humiliated. Story 38. Al Gore. Dude was way ahead of the curve on both the potential of the internet and the threat of climate change, and he's basically gotten nothing but mockery for it. Story 39. Ignaz Semmelweis. He is known today as the savior of mothers. He insisted every one of his staff in his birthing ward wash their hands and instruments between procedures. As a result, postpartum deaths dropped massively in his ward and stayed high in everyone else's. For this he was ridiculed, shunned, blacklisted, and ended up dying in an insane asylum. Story 40. Surprised I haven't seen Monica Lewinsky, so I'll list that one. She was the victim. A bright young lady trying to further her career, and she was taken advantage of by a serial offender. Story 41. I think indigenous peoples around the world deserve an apology from humanity. Throughout history, they have faced colonization, displacement, cultural erasure and violence, often with lasting negative impacts that persist today. Recognizing their resilience and honoring their cultures would be a step toward healing. Story 42. Monica Lewinsky. The level of shaming and hate from the world she received for being in a warped power dynamic as a young woman tells us everything we need to know about how women carry the sole burden of mistakes made by powerful men, especially when it concerns. Story 43. Alan Turing. The brilliant mathematician that helped his country win WW2, only to get driven to suicide from hormone therapy because the nation found out he was gay. His story still aches my heart to this day. Story 44. Palestinians and Israelis. The rich Arab nations first, then the rest of able militaried countries. I really think we should have stepped in decade ago to establish borders and try to enact a lasting peace. It's not guaranteed success, but both countries would not have lost so many of their people and the destruction could have been mitigated. Letting them fight to the death while supplying them arms I feel was just irresponsible.